So why do we resist change? I mean, it's a universal struggle, right? But is it really just about a lack of motivation? Or are there some deeper forces at play? Well, we're about to explore the hidden wiring, both in our brains and in our social groups, that makes change so incredibly difficult. And maybe more importantly, how understanding all of this can make you a much more effective leader.
Just think about it for a second. Sticking to that New Year's resolution, starting a new workout program, trying to learn a new language, we've all been there. We get super committed to improving, but somehow, something always seems to pull us right back to the old way of doing things. It turns out, this isn't just some failure of willpower. Nope, the real reasons are actually hardwired into our brains and even into our social circles.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to start with why change is so tough in the first place. Then, we'll dive deep into the psychology of individual resistance. After that, we'll look at the leadership traits you need to overcome it before zooming out to see how group resistance works. And then, of course, we'll wrap it all up with the P takeaways.
First things first, let's get to the root of the problem. Before we even talk about fear or peer pressure, there's a really basic principle that's working against us. Why is our default setting just to, well, stay the same?
You know, at our very core, we are just creatures of habit. Our brain loves the path of least resistance, that familiar, well-worn neural pathway. So while promising to change feels easy, actually doing it is incredibly hard. And that's because it's not just a matter of willpower. It actually requires rewiring our most automatic behaviors. And that whole process is, by design, deeply uncomfortable.
Okay, so now let's zoom in on what's happening at the individual level. We're going to go right inside the brain to see the deep-seated emotional and, neurological reasons we instinctively push back against anything new. It's a real battle in there.
Emotionally, there are usually three big blockers that pop up right away. First, there's anxiety, that nagging fear of leaving the comfort of what we already know. Then you've got denial, that little voice in your head that insists, hey, the old way is fine, we don't need to change. And finally, frustration kicks in the second the new way gets hard, which makes it super easy to just give up.
But to really truly understand this resistance, we have to go neurological. And for that, we need to meet the amygdala. Think of it like your brain's ancient, very overprotective security guard for all of your habits. Any new behavior, any little change you propose has to get past this gatekeeper first.
And here's the kicker. The amygdala's very first reaction to any change from routine is to slap a threat label on it. It literally makes no distinction between, say, a tiger in the bushes and a new software system at work. To your ancient brain, different means dangerous, and it sounds the alarm immediately.
The second that threat is detected, the amygdala just floods your system with stress hormones to get you ready for action. And this isn't a conscious choice you're making. It's a purely chemical, totally automatic response that hijacks your rational mind before you can even think about what's happening.
And those are the hormones that trigger that classic fear, flight, or fight response. So when you or your team feels that resistance to change, it's not just all in your head. It's a real, physical, biological reaction. Your body is actively trying to protect you from the perceived danger of something new. Overcoming this means you literally have to forge new pathways in your brain, and that takes time and real effort.
Okay, so if we are literally hardwired to resist change, how on earth does anyone lead a successful change initiative? Well, that brings us right to our next section, the psychological traits and tools that effective leaders use to navigate all this biological and emotional pushback.
The absolute cornerstone for leading through resistance is emotional intelligence. And let's be super clear, this isn't some soft skill. It's the critical must-have ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, first in yourself and then in the people around you. It's the toolkit for navigating the messy human reality of change.
Emotional intelligence really boils down to three core pillars. It all starts with self-awareness. You have to know your own emotional triggers. From there, it extends outward with empathy, the ability to genuinely understand the fears and perspectives of your team. And then you put it all into action with social skills, communicating, influencing, and building the trust you need to guide people through uncertainty. Building on that foundation, effective change leaders show two more critical traits. The first is resilience. That's the ability to handle setbacks, stay flexible, and keep your eyes on the prize. The second is powerful communication. And that's not just about broadcasting a vision. It's about making that vision feel real and, crucially, creating ways to genuinely listen to what people are telling you.
Ultimately, so much of this comes down to trust, integrity, being honest, being ethical.
That's what earns you the right to ask people to follow you into the unknown. And paired right alongside that is motivational ability. That's the skill of inspiring your team to keep going when their brains are screaming at them to just retreat to what's comfortable.
This brings us to what might be a leader's most powerful tool in the heat of the moment: self-regulation. When you see those emotional blockers in your team, the anxiety, the frustration, your own emotional state is absolutely critical. By staying calm and managing your own impulses, you become an anchor for the group, creating the psychological safety they need to find their balance again. So far, we've been focused deep inside the individual brain. But here's the thing. Even if you manage that perfectly, change often fails because of an even more powerful force, the group. So let's zoom out and explore the sociology of resistance.
Now, to really get a handle on group resistance, you need to know about social identity theory. It's a foundational concept that explains that a huge part of our sense of self, who we fundamentally believe we are, comes from the groups we belong to. That could be your department, your company, your whole profession.
This theory perfectly explains that powerful us versus them dynamic we see all the time. We instinctively trust people inside our in-group, and as a result, any change proposed by an out-group, whether that's upper management, a different department, or consultants, is often met with immediate suspicion. The resistance is based on who is proposing it, not on whether it's a good idea.
And this is really where the power of the group becomes crystal clear. Group norms aren't just rules written down somewhere. They are the invisible glue that holds a team's identity together. So, any change that feels like a threat to those norms automatically becomes a threat to the group itself. And that triggers a collective, we have to protect ourselves kind of response.
And beyond just norms, there are a few other sociological hurdles. A change will definitely be resisted if it seems like it's going to lower the group's status or its influence. Groups might even organize, either actively or passively, to protest. But maybe the biggest one is this. Resistance goes through the roof when the leader driving the change isn't seen as one of us, someone whose values just don't align with the group's identity.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from the individual neurons firing in our brains all the way out to the social dynamics of our teams. So let's bring it all together into a clearer, unified view that you can actually use as a leader.
Think of this table as your ultimate cheat sheet. On one hand, you have the psychological perspective. This focuses on the individual. The core barrier is our hardwired brain, that amygdala threat response. A perfect example is one employee's personal anxiety about learning a new system. On the other hand, you have this sociological perspective. This focuses on the group. Here, the barrier is all about social identity and group norms. And that looks like an entire department resisting a new process simply because it came from management, an outgroup.
And this brings us to the final, most critical question for any leader trying to drive change. Are you addressing the individual's brain, or are you addressing the group's identity? You see, the answer is that truly effective leadership isn't an either-or choice. You have to do both. You have to soothe the individual's primal threat response while at the same time honoring and navigating the powerful social identity that holds the group together.